We are back in session. I'm going to ask for a motion for the agenda up through student services. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Shaw, second by Mrs. Becker. Is there any discussion? Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mrs. Chu?
Yes.
Dr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mrs. Lax?
Yes.
Mr. Philipchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Reese?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw? Mr.
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes, motion carries. Any committee or organization reports? Dr. Cohen?
We had, I believe there are minutes in your agenda for the Transportation Committee, which met on April 6th. The major issues that we discussed at that time was redoing our transportation routes and setting out for solicitation of bids for some of those routes so that we could hopefully bring down the cost of the bus routes, which have gotten a little out of hand. The other thing we discussed was reassigning some students who were living in pocket areas to schools that were closer to, in elementary school, to schools that were closer to where they resided. But we decided to hold that off at this time and recommend to the board that we include that in a larger discussion about school boundaries, which has really not been addressed by this Board of Education in a good 25, 30 years. We have kids that are going to elementary schools that are bused across town, where there's home schools that are, at least 2 or 3 that are closer to where they live. And we've allowed this process to continue for so long now that instead of just looking to do it piecemeal, the recommendation to the board was to consider looking at the entire district-wide boundary assessment. And that was the bulk of the meeting for the transportation plan.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cohen. Any other committee or organization reports? Mrs. Shaw?
The Garden State Coalition of Schools met on April 27th, and I would like to give a quick synopsis of our discussion. Testimony was given by the Garden State Coalition at the budget hearings, asking especially for an increase in extraordinary aid for special education students during this budget cycle, as we felt that there would be no winners, no losers, and therefore they would not feel as though they were taking sides against urban versus suburban schools. There has been a bill proposed by Jennifer Beck and Senator Sweeney in their respective houses to amend the funding system. Legislators from both sides are talking about the need for it. Issues of being undertaxed and over-aided have actually come up in discussion, so you can imagine how interesting that is. In regards to lead in school water testing, bills number 2022 and 3680 have been introduced for fast track. This would include reimbursements for districts that have done testing already. They plan to allot $3 million from the general fund for testing and up to $20 million from the Clean Energy Fund for remediation. It was announced that the ELC, in conjunction with the ETS, will sponsor a conference on regionalization of school districts. So although that hasn't been on the horizon for a while, this conference is trying to get it back out there one more time. And then the remainder of our meeting was spent rigging the park exam over the coals and discussing ways to improve its validity. Peter Schulman of the DOE is playing a larger role in the administration of this examination. People from Garden State felt that he truly is listening. Barry Ehrlichman has been transferring into other roles at this point in time. And she, as you may remember, was one of the lead people in charge of the administration of the park exam at the DOE. That's my report.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mrs. Chu?
So on April 20th, we had a meeting of the calendar committee where we discussed a process for the development of the calendar. Beth Warren presented on considerations that have to be taken in developing the school calendar and walked us through the process. We began discussion of some of the input that we received from the strategic planning sessions that we held in January. Want to thank the community and the staff participation, and look forward to continuing the discussion.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Chu. Any other committee organizations?